Today it's my great pleasure as a CEO of 𝗬𝗵 to be the moderator of the second session of our National Director Conference 2022 under the theme of Wisdom for the Future, Harmonizing the Diverse Board. We are going to come to the second session, which is leveraging young directors as a game changer.
There are three ways we can define board directors, I would say, in my view, when I look at promoting them, their representation. I mean, young directors. One would be executives, how they rise up through the ranks, and the other one is independent directors, mostly taken in for their expertise on ESG or technology or financial backgrounds. And lastly, startup boards. And one thing, I also work on a number of startups, especially with the ADB, the World Economic Forum and others. And here, something that's quite surprising is that in startups, it's usually the other way around.
And that is something that I think of as someone with a young mindset, is definitely open to new inputs. And what I would say is an older and a fixed mindset is, this is the way we're doing it, and I'm not open to change. I don't care how rational your argument is. I'm right, you're young, you're small, sit down, shut up, and don't ask any more questions or make comments. So I think that being young, whether it's a family board or a professional board, is an opportunity to inject something unexpected and to bring a bunch of new perspectives that the board hasn't considered, and to teach them about what else is going on in other industries and things that you see. I think the biggest challenge for anyone joining a new board, young or older, is getting along with your peers and understanding what is the sort of the ethos of that board. How does that board function? And the second thing would really be to come in with a very well-informed perspective of not only your company in that industry, but what else is happening in that industry. It's impossible to understand what your company does in a vacuum, and you really have to understand the other macro factors at play and who the competition is, perceived, or who could be your competition. I think having a very broad mindset about what industry your company is in and where competition could come from is very important, as well as good general knowledge about the world. Being well-informed, well-read, talking to other people. So I think that coming into any board, it's great to have good perspective.
Another challenge is that it's always mostly a lonely battle. Because what we find is that, as I mentioned, sorry for repeating this again and again, but S&P 500 companies, half of them don't have somebody under the age of 50. So even if somebody with 20 years experience or 25 years experience gets into one of those boards, he or she will be the first person under the age of 50. So when a young director goes in, he sort of feels like, what can you say, sort of inferiority complex to even speak up, to get maybe shot down if there is no encouragement from the rest. So communication gap would be another thing. And when somebody young comes in and he doesn't fit in or cannot speak the language or at the same level, so kind of like feeling a bit left down. And when the actual board meeting comes in, feels a bit less confident to speak out.
I think it's important in any situation to be able to win people over, to have support from other people. It's always going to be lonely if it's you against everyone else. And so I have, in my experience, found that if I'm able to share an opinion that I think is important but wouldn't be valuable to bring up in a board meeting or not sort of appreciate it, I try to do it offline so that more people can get on board with it earlier and have time to reflect on it. People get defensive if they feel like you are attacking them during a board meeting because it is so formal and everything is recorded. So that's not the best place to be confrontational unless you're trying to be some activist shareholder or director. I think it's best to use good manners and use your best judgment in how would you make friends outside of the boardroom, and use those same behaviors to cultivate relationships inside so that you can affect the change that you want. I think what new directors can bring is, to show a willingness to learn and to appreciate that other people have been there for a long time and have a lot of perspective that, they would appreciate if you took the time to get to know. Because it's very easy to make judgments about something one quarter at a time when you don't have the perspective. All those data points adds to young people being able to add something, to know that their seniors also didn't always get it right, and some kind of vulnerability. So I don't think the actual board meeting is the place for that type of discussion or bonding to happen. So I think there need to be structures that exist outside of the formal board meeting that allow these softer and more informal conversations to happen and for the sharing and learning to be more meaningful. You've got to give them a chance to present to the board on a variety of different topics, and they can be things that are important and critical to the company, or they can be things that we assume are going to be important for the company on theoretical things. But unless you allow them a chance to say something without it being like a critical part of the agenda, you're never really going to see how someone behaves. Of course, if there's a crisis and some young director is by some miracle able to fix your crisis by calling the right chairman of another company or doing the other things.
Because one way other board directors or even the chairperson can help is if they disagree with a young director on a point he or she makes. Because one way other board directors or even the chairperson can help is if they disagree with a young director on a point he or she makes. Sometimes it would be better to not, unless it's a very important thing that has to be shut down at the board level itself. Instead of putting it in a very diplomatic way and after the meeting taking them to a side and